I mean, you really aren't not going to be able to tell. Perfect timing.
Perfect. That's managed to put on a few ties.
A little bit and then bring it over here.
Okay, thanks for rolling with us, Mark. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's no problem at all. Okay, can I hear you guys in the control room? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, and whenever you guys are ready, go ahead and hit the show open. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are right now. I'm Mark Gillespie, and no, this is not the WhiskyCast.com studio in New Jersey. We are in Las Vegas, Nevada, because the Nth Universal Whiskey Experience is this weekend. I want to thank our friends at Blue Wire Studios for making this possible for us to do the show on the road this week, because I've got a couple of great guests with me. If we can cut to the wide shot here. On my left, the one and only Richard Paterson, the nose from the Dalmore, and Craig Bridger, who heads up whiskey advocacy for Whyte Mackay in the Americas. Gentlemen, how are you?
Fantastic. So good to be out the country. This is my first trip, in 2 years and 3 months.
I was about to ask about that because this is my first festival in 2 years and a month. Since Dramfest 2020 in Christchurch, a week before everything went into lockdown. How hard was it for you to get back out on the road again after 2 years?
It was difficult, but it was exciting because things have changed a lot and every country has had its many problems. So my heart goes out to all those many, many thousands, even millions of people that have been affected by this pandemic. It's really been unbelievable.
What did it take to get you back out on the road and feeling comfortable knowing that you have to put your nose at risk going out in public?
Not really. Everybody started to travel, but the Nth, festival we're going to be attending to, that's what it says up here, whiskey. That's what it's all about. It's bringing together, harmonizing, and making everybody happy once again. And whiskey does that.
It certainly does. Craig, tell me about your struggles the last 2 years trying to get out on the road again.
Well, I learned a lot about Zoom, Mark.
I think we all did.
Yeah. By the way, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, and of course to be in Richard's company. Always a treat. Yeah, it was a struggle. Myself and our team of single malt specialists here in the U.S. All had to pivot quite quickly into figuring out how do we do these jobs that are primarily about experiential occasions and getting liquid to lips. How do we do it through a computer screen? So we were shipping off sample kits to folks and doing virtual whiskey tastings and virtual happy hours. And on one positive side, though, I did discover that I didn't need to wear my pants, which was nice. You could just be well set, normal suit and boot from here above, and then wear whatever you want down below.
Thanks for sharing.
You're
I
welcome.
think that's almost too much information.
Sorry, Mark.
As opposed to wearing a kilt out in public, too.
Fair, right.
You brought some whiskey for us to sip on while we're doing this.
I did.
What'd you bring?
I thought, to lubricate our chat a little bit, it would be a good idea to have some Dalmore 15-year, one of my all-time favorite expressions of the Dalmore, and I know one that Richard is quite fond of. So I just thought this might be nice to have while we chat.
Craig, let's get you closer to the microphone, too, so we can hear you.
Sure. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Is that better?
Much better.
Great.
And Of course, the Dalmore is one of our sponsors, and we are grateful for that support. Richard, I'll pass this on down to
Great,
you.
thank you.
Tell us about what went into blending the Dalmore 15.
Well, we come down to the cask because the cask is king. 80% of the influence comes from the cask. It's really making sure that the cask will be compatible, and it's very much compatible with this particular style of sherry. This is from Gonzalez Baez, 15 years old, and 3 different styles of sherry. First of all, we've got the Methuselah, which of course is exclusive to the Dalmore, 30 years old, 127 grams of sugar, but 30 years old. So that's the first style. Then we've got, of course, the Apostoles, 30 years old as well. And then finally, we've got the beautiful, soft Amoroso, which is 15 years old. So we do a proportion of each one of these. We want to make sure that we highlight that lovely chocolate orange, that, bitter chocolate, really these lovely citrus fruits. But then being 50 years old, we've got that sort of figgy note, sultanas, coming from, of course, the beautiful sherry.
I just want to clarify one thing. The sherries are 30 years old, or are the whiskeys 30 years old?
No, the actual sherry has to be 30 years old, and I mean that sincerely. The Consuelo Regulador in Spain, in Oreta la Frontera, if they do not attain that kind of quality that passes the real sort of characteristics of that 30 years, they won't be certified. So Gonzalez Baez have to make sure it will be a minimum of 30 years old. In the Solera, it will go up to even 45 years old. So these sherries, these beautiful bodies, will be left in the pores of the wood. And then when we put our Dalmore in, it draws it from the pores of the wood and really gives it that added luxury level.
Yeah, beautiful wines. And as I spent more time with Whyte Mackay and with the Dalmore and at Richard's side, it became more and more critical to learn about sherry. I by that point in my career, I knew a little bit about whiskey, but to really learn about the Dalmore, you almost have to go to Jerez and learn about these sherries too, because it's such an important part of the DNA of the Dalmore.
Well, I think we should sample this. Richard?
Slangiva.
Slangiva.
Now remember, please, Mark, we've done this a few times. Make sure this is 15 years old. It's so important to give it 15 seconds, at least 15 seconds. Top of the tongue, underneath the tongue, and back in the middle. So, Slangiva, here we go.
Slangiva.
I'm just surprised you didn't say hello to the whiskey as you usually do.
Let it go down. Wait for it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Hello there. It comes up. The first taste is important, but always the second taste. Just wait for a few more seconds. Go back to it. And the second taste will really help to tease out these wonderful flavors. 15 years old, and you get that sort of marmalade, the sort of citrus fruits, and then that balsamic coming through, a little bit of the bitter chocolate, hints of coffee, just lingering on. This is something that will linger long in the palate. So forget about your Chateau Lafite, Latour, Margaux. This is the single malt Dalmore.
We should talk about the new expression you're releasing, a 21-year-old Dalmore.
21, yes.
If the U.S. finally gets this one for the first time.
Well, it's going to take a little bit of time. We hope to get it in, later on in September, with all being well, and limited to only 1,000 bottles. So it's in rarity. It is very rare, but this is a 21-year-old, once again using Methuselah. Now, I just want to explain, when we talk about Methuselah, it is very old, but it's 75% Palomino Fino, 25. This is the most important part, the 25 Pedro Jimenez. These are the white grapes that have been put on the esparto mats and baked in the sun for 3 weeks to get rid of the excess water, and you're left with these lovely raisin notes that have then, of course, transferred into the sweet sherry. So that's why you get the balance between dry and sweet, and of course that helps to add that level of luxury in the Dalmore 15 years old.
And you're going to pour some of that tonight, right?
I am, yes. 21, because of the age. Really, this is 21 years old. This is really showing the age behind it, but the luxury, because we spend extra time. This is nearly up to 4.5 years in this Methuselah to tease out what we call antique flavors, because only age can bring these very older notes, the balsamic, the licorice in particular, to really show that expression. This is one for sitting down, enjoying with the people you love. Don't be in a hurry. Just take it after dinner, preferably after a creme brulee. Serve a coffee, Nicaragua, Java coffee, 2 mouthfuls of that, very warm. Let it go down. Take the, Dalmore 21, put it in the palate, hold it there, hold it, let it go down. Then take some bitter chocolate. Let it melt in your mouth. That will then combine with the whiskey, to combine with the creme brulee, the coffee, and it will take your ordinary dinner into a luxurious banquet.
And for those of you who may not have seen it 2 weeks ago, we did a whole whiskey and chocolate session with
wow.
Rachel McCormick.
Very cool.
And I wound up tasting chocolates and whiskeys for the entire hour.
I'm sorry.
And pairing them up. And yeah, it's tough work.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah, this beats real work altogether.
Someone's got to do it, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Well,
Now, what else are you guys pouring tonight and tomorrow?
So tonight, in addition to the new 21 year, and may I just say the 21 year really encapsulates what is perhaps my favorite cask formulation that Richard is famous for putting together at the Dalmore, and that is, of course, whiskeys that are initially matured in the American oak ex-bourbon barrel, and we're building the foundation with that lovely American oak, and then making use of these exquisite Methuselah sherry casks that are exclusive to us at the Dalmore. We are the only distillery that will get those casks, and it's in the sort of song and the harmony between those two casks that we create something like the 18 or now the new 21 year. And for those of you that have seen a Dalmore 21 year in the past in the UK or in other markets, this is a different whiskey. This is a new formulation. It's the first time we're going to be getting at that into the U.S., as you and I were speaking of. And yeah, only 1,000 bottles coming to the U.S. Should be getting here, if all things go well, in May.
May.
In May, yeah.
That's great.
You were thinking of the 30 year, I think, Richard.
Yes.
So tonight we'll also be pouring the 2022 edition, this year's edition of the 30-year-old, which will indeed be arriving in September, we hope. And that, just like last year's release, will be all about exploring the nuances that develop between American oak matured Dalmore and showcasing these beautiful port pipes from Graham's, which Richard has also maintained exclusivity to with his relationships there. So we'll have those two tonight at the High Roller Lounge.
And then tomorrow night you'll be pouring the rest of the range, right?
Tomorrow night you'll see what we call the principal collection from the Dalmore, which is grown quite a bit in the years that I've been working for the distillery. So we've got a lot of whiskeys to showcase tomorrow. We'll have everything from the 12 up to the stately King Alexander, and then our super pour, as they call it at this event, will be the Dalmore 25-year-old,
which is a classic.
Yes.
I want to turn back to you for a second, Richard. We're talking about Methuselah sherry. What makes Methuselah so special?
When we've been dealing with Gonzalez Baez for over 100 years, that's the association we've got with this great bodega. But over the years, we've gone over there, we've looked at their different styles of sherry. We started off with the lighter ones, the 15, the 20s. But when we actually looked at the Apostoles, 30 years old, we even looked at Noe, which is a PX. But the Methuselah just had that real degree. So when I looked at that style of Dalmore, particularly our old ones, particularly the 21, the 25, the 30, the 35, the 40, and even up to the 62 years old, the enhancement on the weight and body of that particular style of sherry with its richness was the most compatible style of sherry that helped to enhance, as I say, that level of luxury, taking it to a new level. What's so important, more importantly, Mark, is to make sure, even though we're maturing and seasoning our cask with Methuselah sherry, we must keep the balance. We don't want the sherry to overtake. We want it just to give it an enhancement. We call it cask enhancement program, just to raise that bar, but not to dominate it. And Methuselah really helps, in our opinion, in my opinion, over the years, to do it absolutely perfectly.
Mm.
We have a listener question coming in wanting to know if the new 21 is chill filtered, and if so, why?
No, it's not chill filtered because it's a higher strength. And remember, over the years, up at Dalmore, and even if some of our other distilleries, particularly Tamnavulin and Speyside, it's already being chilled already. So you don't want it. What we used to do, and we do it still on occasions, is to reduce it down to about 40% or 42%, and let it go naturally. Let it cloud, and then we filter it off. We want to retain as much of these natural elements, the natural strength in particular, getting it the right degree so that when you drink it, preferably without any water, not with ice, but it's very personal at the end of the day. However, just let me say, if it is taken the right way and really holding it, you don't need these other, supporters. You just take the spirit, but what you are doing is seeing the whiskey at its very best.
You mentioned Tamnavulin, and there's been a lot of news out of Tamnavulin. It's going to reopen to the public next week during the Spirit of Speyside Festival, which
Correct.
I know you're not. Are you going to be there?
No, I'm going to be somewhere else, unfortunately, yeah.
But there's a new manager that we get to break the news on. Our pal Leon Webb is leaving Canada's Shelter Point Distillery
Indeed.
to move back to Scotland and take over at Tamnavulin. What can you tell me about this move?
It was very exciting. We're delighted to announce this. I just found out myself, and I know the global team is very excited. Tamnavulin has just been going from strength to strength. This little distillery that came online in 1966, really to supply single malt to the popular blended whiskeys of the day, has really started to make a name for itself as a single malt in its own right. It's just a lovely, everyday, great drinking whiskey, classic Speyside character, and we think with bringing Leon on, it's going to really help us sort of step change what we're doing and future-proof Tamnavulin to continue to grow. I mean, just now, the statistics that I'm seeing back from Scotland are showing that Tamnavulin is the fastest-growing single malt in the world. That's just astounding.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Leon's going to be teaming up with Kirsty Hodge, the new whiskey maker at Tamnavulin.
Correct.
Richard, tell me about that relationship between the whiskey maker and the distillery manager, because you've gone through a number of managers over the years at Dalmore, at Jura, and within the entire Whyte Mackay family. Tell me about that relationship from your point of view.
Yeah, whether it's Tamnavulin or Jura or Paterson, I feel more importantly today, the relationship between the manager and the whiskey maker, the whiskey blender, is so critical. And these new, lovely younger people that are coming into the industry are recognizing that. Because what we have to do is clearly understand the role of the distillery manager, but also the role of the blender. They have to work in harmony. I don't want any of this secretive work going on. We're using a different yeast, we're using different casks or anything going behind it. They must be working in harmony from the very beginning to understand what is coming off the still and if there's been any problems, because we've got droughts sometimes, we've got excess water, we've got change of barley. All these fermentation times maybe want to change. We've got staff shortages sometimes. All these things are part of a distiller's life, but it can affect the quality. And whether it be Kirsty, Joe, or Greg, or myself, the quality is sacrosanct. We must make sure the consistency is always there. But I'm really excited, particularly with Tamnavulin, because this is a Speyside single malt. It's elegant, it's refined, it's got real finesse, but it really reflects that beautiful area, that sort of tranquility when you turn off the A9 and you can see the hills above you and you say, oh, I just feel that softness, that no hurry attitude. But really, that's what we're doing with the wine side in particular, getting the right Tempranillos, the Grenache, the Spate Bungers from, of course, Germany. And that's really helped to enhance it. Not so much the sherry. Yes, there's sherry there, but the wines in particular have really helped to enhance the character of Tamnavulin.
It really is one of these underrated distilleries that people should try if they haven't tried it already.
Exactly. It used to be called Tamnavulin Glenlivet, and many distilleries used to be called that.
Right.
But then, of course, quite rightly, there is only one Glenlivet, and we lost the prefix. But it was a way of, there's something like over 53, 54 distilleries in the Speyside Valley. The River Spey runs for 106 miles, but every distillery has its own particular characteristics. And Tamnavulin, Mill on the Hill, of course, is the translation of that word, is really fantastic.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mark, about what a lovely little whiskey it is, and well worth discovering. I was quite impressed. I had never heard of it prior to joining the company, and I'm hard pressed to think of another malt that's as pretty and as nice to cozy up to for the price that it's at. I mean, it's just a great everyday whiskey, unpretentious, unfussy, and a really nice little dram.
We have another viewer question coming in. Why do they not see Whyte and Mackay in New York City? And I think I know the answer to this. It's because the Whyte and Mackay name you use on the blend that doesn't get sent to the U.S., right?
Correct. Yeah. So at the moment, and this has been true. I've been with the company for 6 years, and this has been true for that entire tenure and for some time previous. We're not importing the Whyte and Mackay blended whiskey into the U.S. just now. I'm not sure the reasons why. One of Richard's other creations, the John Barr blend, is in the U.S. If you're looking for a nice everyday blended whiskey from us, it would be the John Barr. Whyte and Mackay is fantastic. It's iconic, but unfortunately not in the U.S. at the moment. But it is the name of our parent company.
And our friends in Canada do get it.
Yes,
though.
they do. Yes.
And they get a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I've brought more than a few bottles back from the LCBO over the years.
Yeah.
Tell me about that Whyte and Mackay blend, though, for people who have not had the chance to try it, Richard.
Whyte Mackay, I joined Whyte Mackay, 52 years ago. Whyte Mackay, the blended whiskeys was still the range, but I must tell you that, blended whiskey still accounts for about 91% of the whiskey market. So that's why blends are still of paramount importance to us. But the Whyte Mackay blend has always been different. What we've always done is taken our single malts, we've blended that together to create what we call a vatted malt, but that had to be changed, called a blended malt. We actually married these whiskeys together. Then we take on our grain whiskeys, 4 to 8 years old. We blend that together and marry them. And then we put the two together to form the blend. But instead of bottling it, we marry it again in these lovely, wonderful in situ sherry butts for a minimum of 2 months. A minimum of 2 months, but it goes up to 3-4 months depending on the demand. But what it is, it gives the whiskey that softness, that elegance, that smoothness, what we call silkiness. So when you see a Whyte Mackay blend, put it in the palate, keep it there, and you'll see how smooth. It's not just the smell of an individual malt or an individual grain, it's a combination. And the marrying, which is very expensive to do, just gives it that, again, that added luxury. But it's a triple marriage, which is so important. And can I just say, over the last few years, with being the new label, and then bringing our 50-year-old Whyte Mackay out, unbelievable. Sales have absolutely, in the last 3 years, have just been a steady flow. And that's why I'm pleased to see that Canada is doing very well with it.
And that's good to hear, because it is good to see stability finally within Whyte and Mackay, because several decades, some might say a decade or more, of somewhat unstable ownership at times. Now with Andrew Tan and his company based out of the Asia Pacific region running Whyte and Mackay, it really seems like things are on the rise now.
Absolutely. When you say that word, Dr. Tan, immediately just my heart beats a little bit faster. Why? Because he's invested so much money, not just in the company, but into the critical factor, from my point of view, the wood, the cask. We've had a huge budget, and he's managed to get and attain. He's also, of course, attained many different luxury sherry houses in Areta La Frontera. So we've got great stocks there, but we've got great stocks of cask, and that gives us the quality, not just the short term, but very much the long term. Get the right cask, you'll get the right quality. And quality, I keep coming back to it. It's about really trying to educate the consumer to say, if you're buying this Whyte Mackay, Dalmore, Fedicare, Tamnavulin, this is a quality product. It absolutely is up to the scratch that you're talking about.
We can't talk about Spirit of Speyside Festival in Tamnavulin without also talking about Jura, which is going to have the first Fégile in 2 years, and the Jura Whiskey Festival is part of that. Are you going to be on Jura this year?
Once again, I'm going to be somewhere else because of the market opening up. It's just been crazy. I've got trips planned for the Far East and Europe, etc., and therefore my time is very, very limited. But Jura, wow, what a wonderful island. 26 miles long, 1 to 8 miles wide, 230 people on the island, one distillery. You see the beautiful paps of Jura as you cross over from Isla. What does it do? It protects the distillery, which is 8 miles. Big, tall stills, but what a different individual product it is. And if you want to really enjoy Jura, particularly the older versions, even the 21s, the 20s, go up to the mountains, go up to the hills, take a lovely Jura, get in the wind and rain in your face, and that's the way to enjoy a great Jura single malt.
And there's a bunch of new distillery exclusives coming out, right, Craig?
Indeed, Jura has all kinds of little gems just waiting to be discovered. Now, unfortunately, if you're based in the U.S., you're going to have to work a little hard to get those. Book yourself a flight, book yourself a ferry. You know, as we remember from the writer of 1984, who was living on the island when he was finishing that novel, and for some reason his name is just flown
George
right out of
Orwell was
Thank
his
you so much.
name.
Whew, thank you so much, Mark. You
But I
saved me.
believe it was Robin something was his real name.
Oh, okay. George Orwell was the pen name,
He
right?
he wrote as George
So-
Orwell.
so-
Mr. Blair.
So
Mr. Blair.
while he was on Jura, he
Yeah, I'm
famous.
surprised you didn't jump in with that, Richard.
Yeah, I was flailing
didn't
over
wanna
here, Richard.
Struggle, but really, he with Mr. Blair. That's George Orwell.
Yeah.
Finished, 1984. But all this, so many different stories.
Sure, but my point was simply that he very famously said that Jura, which he was living on while he finished that novel, was the most unget-atable place in the world, and it remains pretty unget-atable. If you do find yourself on the island, you're in for quite a treat. A lot of lovely new distillery exclusives, and I just like to caution people, when you get there, when you step off the ferry, you're going to notice that you're not able to pull up a signal on your phone. Your GPS isn't going to work. That's okay, because all you have to do is find the road. There's just the one.
One road, 3,000 deer,
Right.
no Wi-Fi, no cell phone connections, and it's a little piece of heaven on earth.
It's a beautiful place.
And this may be above your pay grades. We had a question from a viewer wanting to know when the distillery is going to reopen to tourists.
That's a tough one to say. It's not so much that it's above our pay grades, but that this remains such an unpredictable time where we think we've got our arms around it and we're going to return to normal, and then there's a new variant and we go back into lockdown, and so we've been kind of in that dance, and the average age of those islanders on Jura is also not young, so we're trying to look out for them as well,
And
so
there's no hospital.
there's a lot, and imagine how fast something would rip around
Yeah.
once it started spreading. So yeah, it's something we're evaluating, and it's hard to say with much certainty when we'll be able to be open again, truly for visitors, which we'd love to do.
Hopefully during the festival at least, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now, I have to sort of bug you about something because you got a very unique honor last week.
I did.
You became a made man somewhat as a keeper of the Quaich. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I was inducted into the Keepers of the Quaich at Athol Castle in the Highlands, Blair Castle, on April 4th. And I was with Richard, which was just a tremendous memory, tremendous experience. I'm so honored. A lot of my mentors in the Scotch whiskey industry along the way are keepers, and truly a real honor and a privilege to join their society.
Tell me about the induction ceremony, not having been to it myself.
So there's a tremendous amount of pageantry. There's as you might expect, there are some kilts, there's some proper Highland dress, there are some bagpipes, an address to the haggis. When you become a keeper, you have to say your oath while putting your hand on a giant silver quaich, and then most famously, I think, during the banquet, and Richard had warned me to be prepared for this. At a certain point, all the new keepers have to get up on their chairs and step on the table while they make a salute. So you have to be quite sure that you haven't had one too many drams by that point in the evening, because you're going to be compelled to stand on the table. But I'll never forget this evening. A tremendous experience.
And Ronnie Cox, our old pal from Glenrothes
Yes.
fame, is the master of the Quaich who was handling the Quaich.
He was, yes.
I assume you've got at least one good Ronnie Cox story.
Well, Ronnie and I have been around the world. I just always remember being in Singapore, and I was doing a tasting, and the tasting kind of finished, and there was a knock on the door, and I went, "Who's that?" We're in the middle of the tasting. I said, "We better check," and I opened up, and it was Ronnie. He said, "By the way, Richard, can you keep the noise down? I'm up above you." And I went, "Where did you come from?" But a great guy, a great whiskey like Glenrothes, but he is the master, the keeper of the Quaich, and just in case that word sort of What is a quaich? It is shaped like a nest. That the word means nest, drinking cup. So if you come to my house and I got my quaich out, I'd fill it with whiskey, I'd take a drink, and then I would give it to you. And then I would say, your house or my house is your house, and it would be a cup of friendship. So that's what really the Keepers of the Quaich is all about, bringing the industry together and celebrating the one word Scotch whiskey.
Indeed.
And since these guys have been doing all the talking, I've had a chance to go through that Dalmore 15, so I'm going to pour a little bit more of this one.
Do you think you could pour me one, please?
Yes.
Thanks very much.
You know,
Thank
Mark,
you.
it's funny
Thank
that you mentioned Ronnie Cox, because it just that just jarred a little memory for me. I think the first time we met was many years ago in New York City, when I was still a freelance writer, also doing some writing about the water of life. And you and I were both guests at a Glen Rothes event that Ronnie hosted. I think that's when we met.
I think so. And then you made the transition over to the other side
Correct.
of things.
Yes.
Tell me about that transition, because we've been running this series about how people got their first jobs in the whiskey industry. How'd you move from writer to ambassador?
Well, it was a number of things all coming together, and I suppose a little bit of right place, right time. I was also a bartender in New York City, so I'd had a long tenure behind the bar, and had really fallen in love with all whiskeys, but particularly single malt Scotch, which I just felt like was the apotheosis of alcoholic beverages. I was quite taken with it, and it just so happened that the bar I was working at the time, which was the bar portion of Craft Steak, a lovely restaurant in the meatpacking district of New York. In that same building above was the U.S. headquarters for Moet Hennessy. So a young David Blackmore and his boss, Brian Cox, used to come down and order Glenmorangies from me at the bar. And I started talking to those gentlemen.
I ran into Brian today here at the hotel.
Yeah, he's here, and so's David. Yeah,
I've not seen Blackmore yet, but
Yeah.
we ran into Brian walking down here.
Brian was keepered with me. We were both at the keepers together.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So at any rate, those were really two of the first people on the supplier side that I met, and it was through them that I was able to write a story featuring Dr. Bill for Men's Health magazine about Scotch whiskey. And there was a period there where I just started to meet a lot of fantastic people in the industry. Martin Duraz with Highland Park at the time, Ricky Crawford with the Glenlivet, and ultimately I had enough friends and relationships in the industry that when Ricky decided to do other things with his career and stepped away from the ambassador role for Glenlivet, I was able to put my hand up for that and got my first opportunity working for Glenlivet in New York.
And then on to Whyte Mackay.
Ultimately on to Whyte Mackay, and this is the company and the whiskeys that I've been working with and representing the longest in my career, and it's really been the privilege of my career to work on these whiskeys.
So how's he done, Richard?
Well, he's done pretty good, actually. No, really seriously, I never forget meeting Craig for the very first time in New York, and I thought, what does this guy really know? But really, with his acting career, but particularly his bartending career, his communication skills was immediate apparent. He had a sort of walked in, he had that charisma, he had that style. And, I don't mind saying we worked all over the world, but particularly, in America, we work as a team. It's not just me. I am very much reliable on Craig, and I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart, he's a great asset to the company, but he brings that sort of conviviality, and he knows how to professionally bring the brand out and to really exploit it and show the image of what Dalmore, not just Dalmore, the Whyte Mackay, the Jura, the Tamnavulin, Feddercairn, what they really mean. And he has sort of taken on the soul of the whiskey. And that's what it's about. It's taking not just the understanding of the whiskey, you've got to have the passion that burns inside you and get to know the soul, so that every time we do a different expression, you can see it, emanating and changing all the time.
I want to take you back to the new Dalmore 21-year-olds. Since there was a 21-year-old before, when you're getting the commission to create a new 21, do you start with that old one as the basis, or do you start with a clean slate?
I start with the previous one, but because what I want to try and do is highlight what we call these antique flavors. And it's not a rush job. It was never, the 121 before was never rushed. But what we want to do is give more longevity, more accent on some of these key notes. Now, I'll take one immediately, and that's the sort of sun-kissed raisins, the sultanas, that bitter chocolate, and that licorice, that soft balsamic licorice note, because it can only have been attained when you leave it longer in the wood. It's not the wood element that's coming out, it's these sort of top notes that harmonize together. And that's why, it is a different expression. I'm looking at a different person. Yes, it's the same person, but we've given it a different suit, a new dress to really accentuate some of these rare flavors that perhaps can be really seen when people will sip it, savor it, particularly after dinner. This is what I want people to do, because it's at 21 years old. This is, to my mind, when the Dalmore really shows its passion, its elegance, its refinement.
May I add to that just a little bit?
Sure.
One of the things that I am really excited about as we receive this new expression, the 21-year-old, is we see now a full finish in the Methuselah sherry. Every drop of the liquid going into these extraordinary sherry casks in the last few years, and that's honestly quite atypical for us. What you normally see from Richard and his blending and his marrying style is we will take a portion of the maturing whiskeys and move them into something else to give what we call a finesse at Dalmore. We'll finesse the whiskeys in the port pipes, or we'll finesse the whiskeys in a sherry or different type of cask. So in the principal collection, it's only in the 18 year where you're going to see every drop of the liquid be finished in sherry. And so now with the 21, we're investigating that idea again, but with even more age, with even a little bit more muscularity, and the result is really fantastic. So quite unusual to honestly to see a full finish. It's usually just a portion.
We have another question that's come in that is a question we get just about every week. Other than your own whiskeys, what the industry, who's doing good stuff other than Whyte and Mackay when you look around the industry as a whole? Because we like to talk about that rising tide lifting all boats.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are doing good things, it helps the overall image of Scotch whiskey in general. Who's doing good stuff?
I really think that everybody's doing great stuff. When we talk about how did it all begin, 1997 when we had our first whiskey festival in Frankfurt, then it came over to New York in November 1998. Now every city capital has their own whiskey festival. But what they did at the very beginning is, yes, a lot of the enthusiasts came, they demanded the whiskey, they saw the blended whiskeys, and then they saw the bourbons, but now they are asking, what about this, what about that? And in order to really give them the saturation that they're looking for, is that they're very demanding. So we've had to look and be innovative. So it doesn't matter if it's Diageo, Pernod Ricard, William Grant, and even the smaller companies, they've all sort of invested in different styles of woods that's going to excite and stimulate the consumer. And you're going to see many different expressions coming out, along with the many boutique distilleries. We've got 134 distilleries in production. We've got 25 new boutique distilleries that are starting up. So they're going to be coming into the pile eventually, but it's going to take a little time for them to accentuate and to show what they've got to come up with.
I've got one for you. I was just thinking how transformed and how fantastic is George Dickel right now. I've really been enjoying the recent releases from that famous Tennessee whiskey distillery, and maybe partially because I'm really excited and proud of Nicole Austin, the master distiller. Nicole and I are old friends. I knew her back when she was a chemical engineer in New York City and volunteering her time at Kings County Distillery in Brooklyn because she was just so passionate about it. And to see what she's been able to achieve in this short period of time is just extraordinary, and I've been loving her whiskeys.
Oh, yeah. The collaboration that she did with Todd Leopold at Leopold Brothers, blending their ryes, just absolutely first rate.
Yeah, and also it's really great to have a fantastic American whiskey that doesn't hurt the pocketbook. You know, they're still tremendous values, value whiskeys, and just delicious. So. There's always room in my back bar for one of those for sure.
Oh yeah, you mentioned the small distilleries coming in, Richard. One of those is one you're involved with at Wolf Craig. What's the status there?
Well, we're still sort of looking. We've got the right position. We're working very hard with the Stirling Council. These things are very slow. COVID has sort of slowed things down, but we're looking to see if we can really get things going. Everything's sort of set up, the land, the water rights, everything else. So hopefully in the very near future, it will now probably move into 2023, even maybe 2024. These things have got to be set in stone that are going to be right. We've already, started looking at the wood, bringing all these things together, but it's a very slow process. But one thing is sure, with the amount of team we've got together, former blenders, my managing director, of course, coming together, it's going to take a little bit of time, but rest assured it'll be right at the end of the day.
We have another question that just came in, and this is for both of you. Do you think the Scotch Whisky Association ought to lobby to open up the types of casks that are used? As we know, the rules right now require oak casks, no more than 700 liters in capacity. Should there be some innovation involved in maybe opening up the different types of casks and allowing for finishing in different types of oak or different types of wood?
They've already agreed to that. They've said, you can use maybe tequila, cognac, or maybe get away from the traditions. But at the end of the day, when you season it, when you actually use these different styles, it must still reflect the color, but more importantly, the image. You can't have something that's going to completely alienate it from the style and the quality of Scotch whiskey. But again, it's innovations. These innovations, whether it's tequila cask or Calvados cask, or even, sweet wine cask, you've got to make sure that at the end of the day, the quality of our Scotch whiskey remains instead.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that, but I would also say that I'm supportive of innovation almost always. I mean, I would think that would only be exciting, and the good experiments will rise to the top, and the others, we'll realize
We'll get blended off.
Yeah, we'll realize pretty quickly. Well, maybe not that cask. That didn't work too well, but I'd be excited to see that. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also a case of where you can only do so much with the porosity of the wood involved. You can't.
Well, right.
Chestnut, maple, they're not porous. They're too porous, and they would allow too much whiskey to leak out.
Yeah. But again, we must be innovative. We're looking at all different styles of woods. As I say, every November we go up to Dalmore, we go up to our Invergordon. We nose thousands of different casks, and it's making sure that the maturation, the seasoning with these different woods are really coming together. Well, nothing will be wasted, I can assure you about that. But it's so exciting seeing the different transformations that will take. But it's all about two words: patience and time. That's what it's about.
Well, Richard, it occurs to me, talking about different types of wood and different types of oaks, you've been working with Greg Glass on the Scottish Oak program. Yeah. Did I beat you to the punch there, Mark?
You actually did, because we just had a question coming in talking about sustainability and asking about sustainability, and that's what the whole Scottish Oak program is geared to, right?
Absolutely. We've been, over the last 3 years, we've actually been, putting in the ground. Only 2 weeks ago, we've planted thousands and thousands of trees. But remember, tree management, particularly with oak. You guys in America, Ozark Mountain Range in Missouri, have been doing it for a long time, making sure when it grows, you cut the branches off. We're in Scotland, Scottish oak, it's all over the place. 20% you might be lucky to get. We're over in America, 60%. So we have to make sure the woods are replenished and the oak will come through. But we're going to have to wait a long time. But already we've got oak casks, fallen oak, and everything else that's been used. So it's exciting, but it's going to be different.
But you have to plant those trees now so that you can be sustainable 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now.
Absolutely.
Correct.
You come up to Fettercairn Distillery, Dalmore, even Invergordon, but particularly at Fettercairn, the Fask Estate, thousands of trees are being planted there. But it can't just be planted. We have to have other trees that will harmonize and let them grow together. In the past, it wasn't that well managed in Scotland. And unfortunately, when the Romans left a way back, 50% of the oaks, the trees, were decimated. We've only got 10 forests left in Great Britain. 7 of them are in Scotland.
Well, I know that sustainability and the Scottish Oak program, these are real passion projects for Greg Glass, who's master distiller for for Jura and master blender for Whyte Mackay, and has been studying under Richard after coming over and joining us from Compass Box a few years ago. And this is something that Greg has really been pushing, and it's exciting.
We had a quick question again about Wolf Craig. Apparently, the Sterling Council rejected the planning application. Are you going to have to move further away from the city or rework everything?
Well, we're looking for that. I want to say to you immediately, we're going to appeal. We're obviously thinking about it. We're hearing what they're saying. We're trying to work in partnership with them because where is it? It's right beside, overlooking the Stirling Castle, Wallace's Monument. It's 1.4 million cars pass it every day. It's a prime site. What to do to bring real rejuvenation into the Stirling, the old capital of Scotland? It needs enhancement. It needs people. And we think that Wolf Craig Distillery will be part of that. So hopefully we can work together with the City Council and see what transpires in the next few months.
I want to wrap this up in a minute or two here, but just to get some final thoughts from both of you, where do you see the industry heading over the next 5 to 10 years? We're seeing more and more interest around the world in Scotch whiskey, and more people drinking it, of both genders, or all genders really, all races, all colors, all creeds, all religions for the most part. And with people really sort of embracing it, where do we see Scotch whiskey heading? Are we heading towards another bubble, or are we heading towards years of continued growth?
I'd like to see there's going to be years of continued growth. I've just literally finished last week working for the International Spirits Challenge, when we had Scotch whiskies, Irish, Japanese, you name it, they came in. But what came apparently from that, it was most in evidence, is the quality. It's becoming so competitive. If you win a gold medal, you're going to be well up there. So what we have to do is come up with, seasoning and making sure that the right ages, the right strength, but more importantly, we educate. We continue to educate the people how to drink it, moderation, making sure that everything's okay. So I see a real future, especially for aged whiskies, single malts, and, could I say, blended whiskies too.
Yeah. Just to add to that, Mark, I'd say that in the time that I've been in the industry, I've seen our consumers and the people who are interested in whiskey and are coming out to our events and are attending our dinners and things like that. They're getting younger and younger. So the faces I look out and see now, from the other side of the whiskey booth or in a private dining room at a Dalmore dinner, they're younger people. They know a tremendous amount about whiskey. They know more about whiskey than I did when I was in my mid-late 20s. And I think the fact that we have those younger consumers who are passionate about whiskey and understand the category is really going to set us up for success in the future. So I hope that's evidence to indicate that this won't be a bubble. I sure hope not.
I hope not either, because I've got young consumers at home that are just getting into whiskey that really enjoy it, and I want them to be able to enjoy it for a long time to come.
Indeed. Amen to that.
Well, thank you for joining us today for the Happy Hour Live webcast. We've killed about 50 minutes that you'll never get back. But I want to thank our guests, Craig Bridger from Whyte Mackay Americas and Richard Paterson, the one and only Nose from the Dalmore. Next week, we're going to talk about Australian whiskeys once again. We've got the folks from Fanny's Bay Distillery in Australia coming in. They're one of the distilleries that is now starting to export into the U.S., and we'll have that story next week on the Happy Hour Live webcast. If you have any comments or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com, or you can get in touch with us on social media. Until we meet again, from Las Vegas, once again, thanks to our friends at Blue Wire Studios for hosting us. I'm Mark Gillespie, along with Craig Bridger, Richard Paterson. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.
Slanjiva.
Slanjiva. You're really good at that, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're really well in command of leading us through the hour. You sound great. You're very good at that.
It's because I've done radio and TV.